So YouTube, thanks for clicking, thanks for checking out the channel. Welcome back. Today we are going to do video 2 on my Pokemon Treasure Box Hunt series. And we're going to get into a little more of the meat of the text, of the things that I think are important. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? All right, so the first portion of this series here, or this portion of the series, we're going to call Getting to the Location. Okay, so in the Pokemon chapter, about 10 pages long, there is a lot of text regarding his actual childhood trip. The text focuses on a large number of pages regarding when he was in New Orleans and where he stayed with his parents and hearing jazz music and going to a bar, sneaking into a bar, and the hotel and all kinds of stuff. There's a whole lot of imagery and description about how super amazing, awesome sauce it was when he was a kid and he got to go to a city as fascinating as New Orleans. And then that's where that stops. Okay, most of the descriptiveness was about in the city of New Orleans proper. Really, very little, or any, if anything, about what happened at Houston. Really, very little, or anything, about what happened in the Ozarks. Very little, or if anything, about anywhere else except for lots of description about New Orleans as a kid. Then the chapter goes into as an adult when Pokemon Go came out and some description of Pokemon, where it originated from, who founded it, Pokemon Go, some talk about Pokemon video games, and just a little bit of background about Pokemon itself. So there's a whole bunch of that may have a whole lot of clues that I am just going to ignore. Crumple it up, throw it away. I don't care. I don't care about any of that. I don't think that's where the good stuff is. Okay? All right. So I think the good stuff I'm going to highlight is where he talks about, because of all the precious memories I had on my road trip to Houston, it would be fitting to leave a treasure box not far from some place I had visited along that journey. I think the key points are him saying that the camper and tents were his primary bedrooms during the adventure. I think a key point is him talking about spending hours turning over rocks in riverbeds and streams and finding salamanders and crawdads. I think a key point was him talking about tiptoeing around hopping toads so that he could hit campground bathrooms in the middle of the night. I think a key point was him talking about witnessing his first American eagle soaring through the sky and what a wonderful treasure these places were. So I think those are the key. I think it's interesting that he says his first American eagle and not bald eagle or anything like that. Just American eagle. That's the background. All the whole chunks of pages when he gives background on the road trip and background on Pokemon. That's I'm boiling it down to that. That's what I think the important stuff is. All right. Later, as far as getting to the location where he's going to do the treasure hide, he talks about getting the help of a Pokemon, of the Froakie. So he says, at a local jazz bar, I happened to meet a type of Pokemon called a Froakie. There's some really strange things that he says, like picking up a jar full of flies from the local pet store to bring as a snack for the Froakie, right? The frog creature. He talks about as we drove, we listened to some John Coltrane. It seemed appropriate. I think that's an important part of this chapter. John Coltrane is the primary clue that makes me think Alabama. John Coltrane, one of his more famous or important pieces of music was a song called Alabama, just musical. and it was inspired by some bombings in Birmingham that killed some girls and during the civil rights movement, and that tie to Alabama and Birmingham with Coltrane, combined with the route from Statesville to New Orleans, having to cross through Alabama, combined with the coin solve image showing the circle for the Pokemon box being in kind of eastern, central, southern Alabama, make me really like that location, that area of geography for the solve for the hide spot. It is my belief that the jar full of flies is a reference to cicadas. They're called jar flies. I think when he talks, well, we'll get into the heat in a minute. So he talks. The weather was sweltering. Maybe summer was not the best time to hide the treasure. In the middle of the summer is when the cicadas come out and they make all kinds of noise and all that kind of stuff. In this chapter, he talks about an army of croakers, reminded him of an army of croakers from his youth, a large gathering of frogs. Guess what that happens to be called? That's called an army. So there's a few references to all the wildlife and critters that he remembers from his childhood. All right, so saying that the air felt hotter than a Charizard's breath when he's talking to the Froakie. Okay, that brought in a whole string of conversation that I think is full of clues. Most of the treasure hunting community concurs that these are super important clues about to come up. So he says the Froakie says it would be unlikely that we would encounter any fire Pokemon along their way. So wherever the hide spot for the Pokemon treasure is, there would not be any fire type Pokemon in that region. He says he heard a loud noise. He could have sworn it sounded like a Mastiff. Okay, a Mastiff, I'm going to drop that in right here. Here's a picture of a Mastiff. It is a big, heavy sounding, woofing dog. The Froakie pointed to a sign and said that was unlikely too. So some type of signage near the treasure hide spot is going to imply that you would not have heard a Mastiff barking. Is it a no dogs allowed sign? Is it I don't know. You can make up whatever conclusion make that fit a theory and jot it down below. Drop it in the comments. What type of sign besides maybe no dogs allowed would make you know that you did not hear a dog barking? The Froakie also says we would not see any Bouffalant either, just so you know. And the author responds he already knew this since he'd already done a little bit of research on the area where they're going to hide the Pokemon treasure before we left. So that has a lot of people, that Bouffalant stuff has a lot of people really liking the Buffalo River as a search location in the Ozarks. So in the Ozarks, Buffalo River, no dogs allowed sign has really got people spun up. They're looking for something like that. Again, you've got three potential clues. Okay, you got the Buffalo River, you've got the Ozarks, which he did say, although he was not very specific what past the Ozarks meant, and Buffalo River, Ozarks, and if you can find a no dogs allowed area in a public land property area, you've probably got a potentially good solve. I think you need a John Coltrane solution, right? It seemed appropriate. He talked, that was really forced section in the chapter. Why did he talk about John Coltrane? Some people are saying maybe it was an audio clue that maybe really had nothing to do with the jazz musician John Coltrane. Maybe it had something to do with the name Coltrane, like a choo-choo train with a bunch of coal cars in it. Maybe some people talk about at a local jazz bar when he found the type of Pokemon called a Froakie. Maybe that was also an audio clue. Maybe it wasn't a jazz music bar. Maybe it was jazz bar, like Jasper, like Jasper. Maybe a city named Jasper. So there's all kinds of theories. I'm just throwing them all out there in here and telling you what I think and why. So I like Alabama. I like Coltrane because of the song Alabama in reference to the Birmingham bombings. Um, I'm sticking with that. Um, what else do we got? So we got through the Buffalo. I don't have a Buffalo reference in any of my solves. And I have maybe a sign that said you would not hear a barking Mastiff, but I'm going to keep that to myself for now until I go check out a few areas. Um, in this chapter, he talks about hearing a rustling noise coming from some leaves and then thinking he saw an obstagoon climbing a tree. I'm going to drop a picture of an obstagoon in here. The obstagoon has at least in this picture, like an X, like as in an X marks the spot on its arm. Some people think the obstagoon in a tree is really is an important part of the clue that they're going to find the treasure 7 feet up a large oak tree, right? The Froakie says the Froakie laughed and said those are raccoons, and then he looked again and saw that it was a mother raccoon and two babies looking at me from about 7 feet up a large oak tree. And then he comments, educating me seems to put the Froakie in a good mood. I really feel like maybe I should have highlighted that green as a clue. The educating me seems to put the Froakie in a good mood. Yeah, I think that's kind of, I don't know, for some reason that sticks with me. So we'll keep this section pretty short, okay? This is, you're at the general location. I think the general location is in Alabama. I think the general location has to be in Alabama because of Coltrane. I think I'm looking for something in public lands where there is signage that says you did not hear a barking Mastiff. There must be something, some kind of reference to Buffalant. I don't know. Buffalant might not mean buffalo. It might mean bison. It might mean longhorn. It might mean any of a number of bovine style references. If you look at the little description of the Buffalant, it might mean afro. I have no idea. The Buffalant has a big head of hair, right? Big, froofy head of hair. Might be the gold rings. I don't know, but something about the area and maybe a reference to a Buffalant made him already do some research that he knew there would not be any Buffalant there. And there you go. I like my area. I like Alabama. I like all the interstates with campgrounds and public lands, and those are the clues, okay, that really make me like Alabama, in spite of a significant portion of the chapter describing his experiences in New Orleans. So I'm sticking with what I'm sticking with, and that's why. Anybody have any thoughts, suggestions, comments? Absolutely feel free to jot it down below. Thank you so much. Appreciate you listening. Good luck out there. I hope the choices and decisions you're making in life are working out for you.